Hello, and a welcome to Align and Activate, raw talks and universal truths. And we are exploring all things spiritual. We've got manifestation, quantum healing, channeling, light language, you name it, we have got it. So, I am Jennie Priestner, manifestation and mindset mentor, master NLP practitioner, channeler, and healer. And I'm here with the beautiful
Amy Goodwin, quantum hypnotherapist, light language, activation, channel and guide, and coach for Starseed.
Lots going on there, lots going in. Very, very, very gifted. So, today we are going to be speaking about what is the higher self. So, yeah, I feel like this just follows on perfectly from what we've been speaking about previously. We were speaking about spiritual awakening, we were speaking about what is energy in the previous two podcasts. So, yeah, this week, following on perfectly, what is the higher self? So, if you are new to this, guys, please like and subscribe to this, obviously, just to support us and just so you're seeing it again next time on your feed. So, Amy, what do you feel and what do you believe the higher self is?
Okay, so the higher self, so it's a kind of a big one for a lot of people because I do feel like there's a lot of different perceptions around this. So obviously I'm going to explain it from, what I've experienced from doing quantum healing hypnosis, okay, which is where I am primarily mostly speaking with the person's higher self, okay? So the higher self is let's say the higher part of you that does not incarnate into human form. We have access to this at all times. So a lot of people ask, and it's quite a common thing to say, well, what's the difference then between the soul and the higher self? And when we start to get into this, it can start to make things a little bit overcomplicated. But I'm going to try my best to give you the simplified version so that it helps you to make sense of it. So, the way that I explain it is imagine your soul is like a tree, okay?
Mhm.
And the tree has lots of branches, and then there's all of these different leaves on the tree, right? So, your soul is the actual tree, right? And the leaves are the many different lives that your soul has incarnated into. Now, when I say lives, could also say timelines or different realities, right?
Mhm.
Now, this is where it does get a little bit expansive, right? So, again, try not to overthink this. So, each leaf, if each leaf is a lifetime, it could be a past life, it could be a future life, it could be a parallel life, it could be a different planet, it could be you could say it with lives between lives. It's all of it. The tree is literally all of it, right? The soul is all of it. Now, your higher self is the part of you that has access to the soul in all of its different incarnations. Yeah, because when we're incarnated into this life, our consciousness is focused into this life and it doesn't have the physical awareness of all of the other lifetimes. Because if it did, your mind would just be like, yeah, I can't live this experience. I can't, learn what I need to do in this lifetime. I can't grow, I can't move forward because as humans, we need to experience life in a linear fashion. We're born, we move through life, and then we die, and then we return to this soul state. But whilst we're in this life, we have access to our higher self that understands who you are on a soul level. So it has a much more broader, much more expansive perspective than what we are able to perceive. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I feel like it's really good to give people the visualization of it as well. I think that sort of really kind of sums things up a little bit as well. So, just when you've mentioned that as well, I'll give my explanation in a minute. I just want to give credit to your explanation. It kind of ties in then with what, like, karmic trauma and things like that, from different lifetimes. Because it's, if you imagine it, all the leaves are on the tree. So, what you've experienced in one lifetime is in some way or another going to be connected to what you've experienced in another lifetime. And
Yeah.
I suppose that's what your BQH sessions, the Beyond Quantum Healing, allows you to do. It allows you to go into these other different timelines, kind of have a peep in, see what's gone on, see if anything needs healing or dealing with, and then obviously send peace to that timeline and then move away just to better the experience in this timeline. So yeah, it was very off the diving board, that one, but I feel like it was a very, very, very good explanation that needed to be offered to people. So yeah, thank you for that one. I will give mine now. So mine is, I would explain it probably a lot more of a simplified version, and I would say it's more of what I've experienced on my journey and how I would explain it with my clients in the work that I do. So I perceive the higher self is you at your rawest form. So I suppose I'm thinking about things. Whereas you've explained things in the cosmos and the entirety, I'm probably explaining what the higher self means to a person right now at this moment in time in their lifetime. So yeah, I feel like mine's are probably a lot more simplified, but still allow me to explain it. So yeah, it's when you're stood here now, it is you in your rawest form. It is your authentic self. It is your true self. It is you at your very, very, very core before, before your parents' expectations got added onto you, before society's expectations got added onto you, because all these things just gently diluted who you were and what you were meant to be doing. So I believe as well that what I do in my coaching work is we kind of peel back the layers and then just allow the person to connect to the highest version of themselves. So, and then in doing that, obviously, it just allows manifestations, allows beautiful gifts to come through. So we'll go through those a little bit later on. But yeah, I feel like my simplified version is a little bit few pegs down from yours, but I still hope it sat well with you, Amy.
It's all relevant. It's all
Yeah.
relevant, and I think it's really important with all of the work that we do, especially in spirituality. It can be such like a an all up here thing, but we're here to live our lives in human form, and we can do that more authentically when we start to access our higher self. And it really is just understanding, like you say, who you actually are,
Mm,
right? Because when you understand who you actually are without all of the imposed limitations, and beliefs and all of that, it's like you can live your life. And I think we did cover it a little bit last week. So, again, if you've not watched last week, after this, go back and watch it. It's like you can live your life in as the most highest version of yourself, right? Because you are accessing your higher self, you access that higher timeline
mm,
where higher manifestations and realities become available to you, because you're not keeping yourself small. You're not in your contracted state. You're in your most expansive state, where you do have access to, as on who you are on a soul level, which means activation of your spiritual gifts, understanding that you are so much more than this physical being, yet being the full embodiment, the fullest version of yourself possible and available to you in this lifetime. So how does that like land with you?
feel like this is where she gets a name from, Activation Amy, because she activates people. This is your work, isn't it? Like you
Yeah.
sit with people, allowing them to connect to their higher self. And I'm not just saying this just because, oh, this is what Amy does, because this is what you've done for me. If we think back to my BQH session, I remember obviously for me it felt like 45 minutes, but we were actually in it for like 3 hours, wasn't it? It was like a good solid hypnosis session. And I remember you took me through to some past lives of mine, which obviously, like you say, they would have been other leaves on the tree, if we go back to your
Mm.
analogy. And yeah, just obviously seeing who I was in these experiences. And then you actually connected me to my higher self. So I ended up being immersed in this beautiful green, heart-centered. It was like it was underwater. It was an Atlantic experience, wasn't it?
Yeah.
and you were like, right, this is the perfect time to speak to your higher self. And then you were asking my higher self questions, and then I started to channel it out. And then, this was again one of the steps on my journey of embodying my higher self. Obviously, I've done my own work behind the scenes, but it is important if you are wanting to connect with your higher self to go and see a facilitator such as Amy to really kind of bring these gifts out of you. And then, yeah, since then, my channeling ability has come on because it was kind of connecting me to that version of myself. So I think another way of explaining it and how I deal with it with my clients within my coaching is imagine if you've got two voices in your head. You've got a higher self, and I'm not going to call it the ego, I'm going to call it the lower self. It's just easier
Yeah.
to understand, I think. And we've mentioned this previously. So the lower self is going to be, you can't do that. What are you doing that for? You're ugly. This isn't right. That is your lower self. It's giving you low vibrational thoughts and feelings. So, whereas your higher self, it's your inner cheerleader. So, you've got your inner critic and your inner cheerleader. And what happens is your inner cheerleader is often benched. It's sat at the side and it's just twiddling its thumbs and it's just waiting to be called upon. And your inner critic's there having a party in your head, like rule and show and do exactly what it wants to do. And you're sat listening to it thinking, right, this is me. This is the voice that I am. And this inner critic's telling you, you can't do that because of this, and this won't work because of that. And within the coaching and obviously within your work as well, we gently learn to heal and quieten this voice down. And when this voice quietens down, we actually give the inner cheerleader within us a chance to actually like stand up off the bench and be like, I can be heard now. I can say what I want to say. And all of a sudden, this beautiful voice comes in telling you how amazing you are, how beautiful you are, how epic you are at life, and how you can smash it and how you can do these things. And once we then learn that we can tell that one to pipe down and this one to like, I want to listen to you now. That's how you start channeling your higher self. It doesn't necessarily have to be, an almighty source experience. It can literally be as little as listening to the positive voice in your head, because the positive voice in your head is your higher self. So even if you, from this session, if you are right at the beginning of your journey and you're thinking, oh, some of this is sounding really heavy for me, even if your one takeaway from this podcast is to learn that when that inner critic comes in, shh, and just allow your inner cheerleader to get its pom-poms out and do what it wants to do and tell you these amazing things. So you've got the power to do that. So that is well within yourself. So please, from today onwards, make a promise to yourself to start listening to your inner cheerleader, because she is cheering you on, or he, whichever it may be. They are cheering. Sorry, I've got the arms out again, haven't I? I can't help it.
The cheerleader, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I just want to say like what it's kind of like to what it is like to hear the voice of your higher self, because I feel like the voice of the higher self, it's actually a lot more subtle than it can be a lot more subtle. It's a quieter, calmer energy than the, let's say, as Jennie calls it, the inner critic, or if you want to call it the lower self, right? That one tends to be quite loud, right? And that one's like, it's kind of more at the forefront. Whereas, I mean, over time, you're going to tune into your body, where it feels in your body. And I'll try and explain, what that might be like. I'll try and explain what it's like for me, like as an embodiment experience. So the inner critic or the lower self will feel like a contraction. Okay, so it will feel like a contraction in my stomach. So you're gonna have to tune into your body. And I mean, this is where like maybe a mindfulness practice, like do a body scan, right? When you have these thoughts that come up, and it'll feel like maybe a contraction in my solar plexus or like a tightness in my chest, right, around what it is that it's saying. Whereas when it's the higher self speaking, it's a breathing out, it's a relief. It comes with a calmer energy, and it's a quieter energy that over time you can learn to be in that state, in that receptive energy. And the way that you would do that if you've been listening to your inner critic for a long time, like I had anxiety and panic attacks for years and years, and it was sometimes it felt hard, to really hear that voice or to know the difference, right? But it is going to feel like a breathing out. And there's a difference between the higher self saying something that's in alignment for you and having a little bit of a sense of excitement around it, and maybe some fears coming up then around that. Like, for example, let's just use the example of starting your own spiritual business, which is a service-based thing, right? And your higher self is, it's time for you to do it, it's time for you to do it. But then the inner critic is going, no, it's not time because of blah 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 blah, blah, right? And that's where you kind of got to learn to sit with the lower self, but have that higher self perspective. But the higher self will always bring compassion to the lower self. It will bring love to the lower self. It will not bring more judgment. Like, because a lot of the time, what we can do is we can have this lower self conversation going on, this inner critic, and you're like, oh my God, will I ever get rid of this voice? That is more feeding into that. So, again, it's learning to listen to the higher self whilst going, witnessing the lower self from that higher self perspective and going, yeah, it's okay. Like, I see what you're doing. I see that you're trying to keep me safe. However, you know, I love you. It's sending love to that lower self. So yeah, how's that sitting with you when I sort of talk
Yeah,
about that?
just when you were saying it, I know what it's like, when you're connecting with your higher self, and it is a feeling of pure love and expression. Like, if we tap into what we were saying last week about energy, and it's like when you're coming from your heart space and you just feel the energy come out from within you. That's how I feel when I'm connected with my higher self. And it's everything just kind of feels with ease. And yeah, if we tap into the example that you just gave us of starting your spiritual based business, which is something that I have been doing within the last couple of years, and most likely have just taken the leap of faith more recently. And it is you, my higher self and the universe was calling to me. They're like, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing this, to the point of it made me physically ill that I couldn't be in my corporate job anymore. And so, in my head, and obviously my lower self was like, no, 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 I need to be in this job. I need to keep doing what I'm doing in the universe. And my higher self had other plans. It wasn't sort of my destination, sorry, my destiny, so to speak. And yeah, there was lots of inner critic, lower vibe things that were coming up. And within that moment, touching on things that we've said before, this is where rewiring your subconscious comes in, because those voices are all coming from your subconscious mind. They are all ideologies that are kind of trapped and encapsulated within you based on, how we were taught when we were growing up. So obviously, to have that comfy wage of every month, to have a job that kind of, meant something in society and all these kind of things. And so these are the kind of things that my lower self and my inner critic were kind of spitting up to me, like, oh, you could, it's really hard work being self-employed and all these things. And we were saying before, we've got to quieten it down, but sometimes as well, you do have to kind of invite your inner critic for a cup of tea, sit it down and actually converse with it. And, because it's all well and good saying quieting it down, but sometimes when we quieten something, it comes back and shouts at us. So we have to actually really sit down, right? Well, why are you saying that? Where's that coming from? And this is where we have to do the inner work and, sit and journal. Where do I feel that voice is coming from? Where have I heard that voice in my past? Is it something that my parents have said to me from years and years and years ago, because maybe they had their own business and it was really hard work being self-employed back in day? So, but again, we are not our parents' limitations. We are us. Our experience is different. So yeah, sometimes it really is sitting with that voice. Journaling helps and things like that, and working through those things. And then the sort of the rewiring process is, it's allowing yourself to move toward your higher self more, like, okay, this is the right path for me because, and give yourself evidence. The subconscious mind, whenever we think of something, the subconscious mind loves evidence. So if you tell yourself, oh, never going to be able to start my business. Your subconscious mind will go ping, 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 and it will give you three lots of evidence of why it's a totally bad idea to start this soul aligned business. We're just using this example still. So, and all it's doing is it's drawing from things that it's seen in your past. But what you have to do in order to rewire and reprogram and tap into this higher self is give it positive thoughts. So it is the right thing for me to do to create my own business because I'm going to have more flexibility and more time. What does that feel like? Ting, program. It's going to allow me to, pick up my son from school. Just give it evidence and make it excited about the opportunity. And this is how you tap into that vibration and that frequency of your higher self because it is a state of consciousness, is it not? It's not like it necessarily you know, physically resides next to us. It is a state of being, it is a state of vibration. So when you're vibrating in a low, moody way, that's when your lower self's going to start chirping up more. But if you are vibrating so high, eventually, like that's your consciousness, that's your state of being. So did I go off on the deep end there, or did that
No,
make
it's so
sense?
again, it's all like relevant. So I just want to touch on like doing inner child work because that's what I like to do. Like because for me, um, and it's all of it, right? So it's all everything that we're talking about. There's different pieces that you can apply. They're all different tools that you can use at different times, right? So for me, the inner child, that almost is like you could say that's lower self. So I really like the Russian doll analogy of like
Mm,
you've got the big one, the higher self, you've got you that's like kind of the middle one, then you've got like the little one, which is like the inner child, right? Because ultimately it's the inner child, your core conditioned programming of what you've come in with those first like 0 to 7 years. That's what you've been imprinted with, and you're always going to be working with that. But it's going to get easier and easier and easier as you do stuff like the NLP that Jennie does. As you start to rewire your subconscious, I really like to go back to the inner child when I'm feeling particularly, when you're like really triggered around something and you're really struggling to move through it, the inner child will give me relief every single time. And that's, what I do with my clients as well. A lot of the times in the BQH sessions, we don't just go to past life, we go to the inner child. We will go back to different memories and we will actually work with those memories and learn to see them from a different perspective. Because and doing ongoing inner child work in your life as well, like literally sitting down for 5 minutes. And honest to God, I think this is one of the hardest things you can ever do because it can feel in the beginning brutal because you will have some resistance. And this is where it may help you and serve you to work with a coach or a therapist or someone that does this work, right? Because you don't have to. You definitely don't have to. There's a lot of, beautiful meditations and things like that out there, but it can benefit from you, especially if you've never done anything like that before, because, it's going to bring up a lot if, like you're going to have an emotional release, and it's literally sitting there visualizing and calling your inner child forward and asking them, you know what do we need to let go of? How do you feel? What do I need to do to it's parenting yourself, but
mm,
you are building that relationship with the inner child that then you're not continuously reliving those subconscious programs. So you do the healing work with the inner child, and for me it's like, and then you will go and do the rewiring, right? Because it's a pattern. It's
mm,
not just something you do once, this work. And this is why I really believe on my own journey with myself of like the power of coaching, right? Because it is a program. You are reprogramming, and that is breaking the patterns, which happens over time. If you've gone through your whole life and you've got all of this stuff and you've got this program in it, it's not going to happen overnight. That's why people get so down on themselves. They start to beat themselves up and they're like, well, why can't I just listen to my higher self? Why have I still got all of this stuff coming up? It's just because, and we talked about it last week with the analogy of building the path, right? That Jennie talked about with her clients, and me, I talk about the movement of energy going through the flow of the river, building the new
mm,
riverbed. So again, go and watch last week's because that's going to explain this even better. But you know, it's not something that happens overnight. Like you do the healing work and then you do the reprogramming as well, right? And it is all one, it all ties in together. And then we do the energy work, right? Which could look like quantum healing or light language, or maybe it's Reiki for you, or whatever it is that you feel called to. And this is why it's the full holistic approach. This is why it's the mind, body, spirit, because you've got to do all of it. And then that's what creates the outside reality being different, because you feel different, because you've covered all bases. The spiritual, the physical, the emotional, and the mental.
I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like you've just, in that last sentence, just given the recipe for living a better life and manifestation. That's exactly what it is to do. You know, we get to this point in our lives and we're just stood here now and it's like, I hate my life. I hate what's going on. Everything's going wrong and I just don't know where to turn. And it literally is, you have to wind back the clock, heal your inner child and anything you experienced in that lifetime. Then you have to reprogram your mindset to think more positively and work in your favor and reprogram it to believe what you want it to believe. And then obviously, you know, it's the energy work. It's obviously bringing in the new energy and also just learning to love yourself. And I think you do that work in your own way as well. And that's what I do with mine. You know, it is the mindset, the energy, and the authentic self. And it really is the strong recipe for just living your best life. But yeah, so you've touched on there, obviously doing the the inner child work. And I believe that NLP as well, which is what I do with my coaching, we do timeline work within that. And it's where you are, you know, you're taking people back to their child self and delivering messages. So we bring up a scene of something that might have happened in the childhood, you know, that's something that's playing over in the mind. And it's so powerful, this work. It really is. You know, like it's because it's not confined by space or time when we go and visit these memories and put ourselves within it. When we associate with these memories, we bring back all the feelings that we felt at that moment in time. So I'm just going to pick a random thing. So say you were bullied in the playground one day and this really, really, really hit you hard. So to go back, visit that memory, associate with that memory, see your child self getting bullied, but intercept it in your mind and start feeding your inner child all the messages and information that it needs to know in that moment. It empowers not only your inner child, but you yourself at this moment in time. The connection of energy is it's inexplainable, really, isn't it? And so when you now bring yourself back out to this current timeline, it's healed you not only then, but the healing is done now. So you are now then empowered and you've released that moment at that moment in time. So it's kind of gone. The energy is dissipated. You are no longer thinking about that time that you got bullied in the playground and it's massively affecting you. And what we do is we tell ourselves, I wish I could go back to that point in time. I wish I could do it differently. And we beat ourselves up that, you know, we weren't this strong person that we are now. And we would have turned around to them and said, you know what, on your bike, mate. You know, we play over this scene in our head and in that moment between what you do and what I do, it allows you to do that kind of thing. I'll just touch on another two things as well that you'd said there. So I remember when you did my inner child healing in my BQH session, and I actually visited my younger self, my child self, in a hospital when I was in hospital when I was in 1992 when I was 7. I had my spleen and my gallbladder taken out due to a chronic illness I had, pyruvate kinase deficiency. And I remember being lay in the hospital bed, and obviously there was a lot of trauma associated with this. And in my BQH session that you beautifully facilitated for me, I held my inner child's hand, and in the session, I was holding my hand, and I could feel the strength of this child. Like do you remember I was crying and crying and crying my eyes out, and I had an eye mask on, and this eye mask was soaking wet by the end of the session. But this is the power of it. Like these tears, this emotion is energy. I was releasing all the energy that I was associating with my child self at that time. And yeah, just being able to feel the strength of this child was just like, wow, next level. Um, and yeah, so something else you touched on there. So obviously, just to explain to people what we mean. So when you are born up until the age of you are, say, 7 or 8, You are very programmable. You are very susceptible to information. So we call that in being in theta brainwaves. So basically, your brain is in a hypnotic state. So just take this for example. Obviously, your mum and dad don't have to come up to you and teach you how to smile. They don't grab your face and teach you how to smile. You are learning how to do that by absorbing everything in your environment. Obviously they have to teach you with a spoon and things like that, but there's a lot of non-verbal communication and, things that are going on that they don't have to kind of teach you. You just pick it up. And you pick it up because your brain is like a sponge. So in that time, in that 7 years, you kind of like it's like do you remember back in the day when a floppy disk got inserted into a computer? It's like that's the floppy disk that got inserted into your brain that says, right, this is how this is how we need to act, this is how we need to do, and this is how everything is going to be in the world going forward. Now off you pop. Now, if you think about it now, we don't have floppy disks anymore, so this data is out of date. But our brains are still running on this floppy disk data back from when we were like 0 to 7. It's teaching us that, if your dad wasn't very nice to your mom and things like that, it's like, right, okay, I now know that it's okay to be treated like shit in a relationship because this is what I got seen. That was not right. This is what I saw. And this is where you find people that are putting up with crap in a relationship. It might be because they are just literally mirroring what they experienced and saw as a child. So this is what we mean by you were programmed as a child, like subliminally. It's just literally you were just a sponge taking in your environment, and it kind of is coming across a little bit sinister what I'm saying, but basically the universe has designed your brain to be like this just so you could literally just go and just take in as much information as possible. So yeah, that's what we kind of mean on that one. I just wanted to break that one down and explain that one to people. So with this theta brainwave, this hypnotic state, this sponge-like state, this is where you can get into this again. So right before you fall asleep and the moment you wake up in the morning, your brain goes into that theta brainwave state again. So this is where they say to people where you want to rewire your subconscious and, reprogram your subconscious to listen to affirmations before you go to sleep and when you wake up in the morning. So yeah, that's my little nugget and tip there.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good one. And it's like, and it does get to the point as well, because I remember when I was waking up every day, to go to a corporate job, and it was we both have been through a similar situation. Like again, like because your higher self, it will not let you will get to a point where it's like, if you keep ignoring this, we're going to you will not be able to ignore it forever. But yeah, just to come back to the affirmations, I was waking up every morning thinking, for God's sake, like another day. Oh my God, have I really got to do this again? Blah, 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 right? And over time, as you start to work with affirmations, you've got to start everything is story, everything is a story, right? And it's the stories that you're telling yourself in your mind constantly. Right, everything is a meaning. Yeah, the meanings that you put on things are what creates your world. Right, so when you learn to change what things mean, which is why doing the timeline therapy, which is why doing BQH, which is why doing meditation, whatever it is that you do, right? You are learning to change your perception, the meaning that you give to something. Okay, so I started to change the meaning around what my corporate job was doing for me. Okay, well, it's not what I want, okay, in this moment. However, okay, it is serving me. So I started to tell the story that it's serving me to create a higher timeline. And when we say timeline, what we mean is situation, right? So a relationship is a situation, a job is a situation, a business is a situation. It's a part of your life, right? And when we say timelines as well, it can also mean like past lives. If it resonates more for you to work with the word situation, use that, okay? But I started to tell myself the story in the morning of, I love how, I love my job, right? I love what I do. I love that I get to help people every single day. I love how energized I feel in the morning. And it's going to feel like a lie at first. But as you start to reprogram your mind as well, like it's at the point now where I wake up and go to the toilet in the middle of the night and I'm literally doing self-love affirmations from the absolute moment that I wake up, right? Because that's how my reality has shifted. And again, it did not happen overnight. It's taken years to do that. And it might not take years for you, but you've got to be patient with yourself and just trust that it is changing, it's all unfolding. But it does start with what you are saying to yourself. And I guess where this starts to bring the higher self back into it is because the expansion that I feel now, like I'd never wake up in the morning because I'm not in that reality anymore, because
Mm.
I reprogram my subconscious to listen to my higher self, which loves you, which brings the self-love in, which brings the expansive state in. So it is going to happen where you are accessing that higher self state. But what can happen in spirituality is that there's all this focus on work with the higher self, but you've got to work with the shadow, which is the lower self, or the inner child, working with the wounded inner child, right, as well. So all of it'll all just like compound on itself till eventually you will find yourself in that higher state. So yeah, that's what I wanted to just say about that, to add to what you said there.
So what you said there though is perfect, isn't it? It's the law of polarity, for it to get my words out, put my teeth in, for us to experience the total lightness, the higher self, we
Yeah,
must also sit with the darkness, the lower self.
yeah,
We've got to work through and understand one in order to get to the other. So I feel like we've spent now a lot of time obviously explaining about the higher self, but I just want to now move on to what the higher self can actually do for you then in your lifetime. So we've said this, like, oh my God, it's absolutely amazing. Let's connect to our higher self. And if you sat at home thinking like, yeah, but what is that going to bring for me? So just going to run through a thing. So connecting to your higher self brings in authenticity. So when I said to you originally, it is the real you, it is the authentic you. So if now, in this moment in time, you are walking around and you kind of change who you are in front of people and put yourself in a box, you turn up to Mary's house and you might not talk about something, or you might oh, she might judge me if I'm saying something. You're not being authentic. When you turn up to work, you're kind of keeping your craziness a little bit at bay. You're not being authentic. When we go out dating for the first time and we think, oh God, don't want them to see our wild and crazy side. So I'll just sit here with my legs crossed and, pretend to be something I'm not. You're not being authentic. So when you are in connection to your higher self, you are your most authentic form. In other words, I'm just going to say it, you don't give a flying fuck what people think about you, because you are just so happy and in love in being who you are that you're just like, this is me, this is who I am, have that. And if you don't like it, on your bike, because you're just so happy with where you are in life. And you get to that point where before you might be thinking, oh, yeah, but if I'm not that, then they might not be friends with me. But in being fake and inauthentic, you're going to be hanging around with people that aren't technically your vibration, because you're bending over backwards trying to fit in. You're going to start chilling with people that aren't really your vibe. And then this is when you'll start clashing with people and just hanging around with toxic people. But when you are 100% your authentic self, you're emitting the frequency out there that all these lovely people that are on the same frequency are all going to move towards you. And this is where you're going to get your soul tribe. This is where you're going to get these amazing friends that you just absolutely laughing balls with every night and just have an amazing connection. So that is number one. You can just be you. Number two is the inner wisdom. So at first, the inner wisdom is your intuition. And so it is when you're on your journey and you are trying to connect to your intuition. Sometimes it's like really hidden quite far down, and it's like you have to really tap into it. But I would say that when you connect to your higher self, I want to call it now an outtuition, because I just feel like my intuition is just always there now. So it's an outtuition. It's not in anymore, it's out. So I feel like I have just made up a word there.
I love
But this
it.
is what we do on
I
this
love it.
podcast. We make stuff up. So basically, what that means is, so to tap into, so imagine you've got a situation in front of you, and you don't know whether to. I'm just gonna, I don't know, go on holiday with the girls because you don't really get on with them, or you don't know whether to stay at home. So what you would do is you would tap into your intuition, you would tap into your inner compass, and you would feel into the conversation, feel into the situation. Whereas when we don't tap into our intuition, we we just go into analysis paralysis, and it's like we're writing all these pros and cons and we're trying to think about the situation when really what we want to do is feel into the situation. How does that situation make me feel? If it makes you feel like shit, don't do it. That's your intuition saying so that's another one there. Do you want to be adding to these and then going along, or do you just want me to keep
I
keep
feel like
rolling
I just
them?
want to like touch on something there, and I want to talk about the full yes, because when you work with your higher self and what it does for your life, you become the full yes. Like your life becomes the full yes. So, for example, in with what you were talking about there, like going on holiday with the girls, and if there's a part of you that's like, I don't feel like I want to do this, but this is what I've always done, and I feel like I should do this. And
Ooh,
anytime that there's a should,
she
oh,
said that word.
the should, right? That's not the full yes. What we're talking about here is the full fuck yes, right? And it's like it feels like like I don't want to swear too much. It just feels like a full yes, right? Because that's what your higher self is. So if there's part of you that's going, and I've had this conversation with a lot of friends that are still in that state of, oh, but I've known them all my life. Like I'm obliged because it's their can do or whatever. No, stop that. If your higher self is like, you know what? It's time to move on from these people. Like, we're not resonating anymore. And that is holding you back. So when you start to work with your higher self, it's going to be a full yes energy, and you're going to be able to tune into that more and more. And when it's not the full yes, give yourself permission to let it go. If it's an I don't know, it's a no. I always say that now because I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not available for it anymore, and my life has changed so much because of using this principle. Because your higher self will be, when it's in alignment with your higher self, it will be the full yes. It will not be an I don't know. It will not be a no, right? And it can be the full yes, but we still have doubts. There's a big difference. Yeah. But overall, it's going to be a full yes. So I just wanted to say that to, yeah, if you want to
No, no.
continue with what you do.
I love that one. Well, do you want to jump back on authenticity? Have you got anything to say about that? Like showing up as the fake you and the real you. Do you have anything to say about that?
I think you're covering it really well, to be fair. Like, I think I always talk about everything in terms of energy because that's the work that I do. But as we spoke about before, it's important to understand like the mental aspect of it, like what's happening. But the authentic you will feel it in your body, right? And you like when we're being our authentic selves, things just flow in our lives. And that's what like I do in my work. I help people to learn how to be in that flow of energy because we never stagnant. And when you're in your authentic self, when you're in your authentic truth, when you're working with your higher self, you're going to flow through life, and you are going to get okay with changing your mind and doing different things. So what this has looked like for me is, so I've had a full-time spiritual business for probably about 2 years. I don't know how many times now I've changed my mind about doing different things, putting out different offerings and different services. And there's been like the lower self part of me, that's gone, oh, like you're not consistent and this, that, and the other. You've got to be consistent. And it's like, no, that's not my authentic self. I need to create. In my authentic truth, I'm in flow. The full yes for me has been trying out different things, okay? And he's constantly always creating. But to other people, they're not my tribe, obviously, but to other people that might look like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing, or la 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 la. And it probably doesn't. Again, that's my lower self, right? But it's about being in the flow of energy. And there's many different ways you can look at this. So it could also look like, you get yourself into a relationship situation, and then it's like, this isn't for me. This is not in flow. And then some, you might have in the past, like we spoke about last week, continued on in that situation just to see. But deep down, now that this is not in alignment with your higher self. It's not a
Mm.
full yes. It's not in flow. So if it's not in flow, it's a no. It just came up with
If it's not in flow, it's a no. Let it go. I feel like that's like the tag and slogan line for that one. But no,
Sorry
it's
about the American accent.
I know, sorry, I do a multitude of like just different accents and voices.
No,
So
it's good. It's just like we know for the American people, like I know they're gonna be like, what was that?
it's kind of like a sorry, not sorry. Honestly, these voices just come
Yeah.
out of me constantly because this is just me being my authentic self. So
Yeah,
yeah.
there we go. There's a good example. There's a good example.
Yeah, I know, because imagine it like in my head, I'm just like, don't do the funny voice, Jen. People are going to judge me. Honestly, I'd just not speak. It'd just be easier just to not speak. So,
She does do a lot of voices, so I'm sure as this podcast goes, we will see more of Jennie's voices. So put your comments below if you would like more of Jennie's
I
voice.
do requests. Oh, right. So I'll move on. So what I'll do now is I'll say my piece and then you do your one and then we'll work through. So this is what the higher self does for you within your life. Because obviously we're talking about this beautiful spiritual connection, but what does that mean on a day-to-day basis? So obviously we've spoke about there about showing up in life, not giving a flying fuck, and just like, absolutely just being your authentic self. We've said the inner wisdom, the intuition, which in the end is going to be your outtuition. Look that one up.
Love that
Um,
outtuition. You've definitely created a
what's the
thing
word?
there.
There's a Urban Dictionary. Oh my God, I'm gonna coin it.
Yes, coin that. That's what I was gonna say, coin that shit because we've
Gonna
never heard
coin it, patented. Um, and then the next one, then. So we've got compassion and love. So when you are coming from a place of your higher self is your heart center. So everything just blooms and blossoms. So if you're very closed down and your heart is very closed, you're gonna have trouble connecting with your higher self. And I'm speaking from experience because that's where I was. Like once upon a time, especially when I was in the thick of like my depression and my PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Like my heart felt empty. It felt like stone. I was disconnected. I felt no love in my body whatsoever. Like that's how empty and lost I felt. My friend walked around the back of my house and I was just sat on the doorstep Googling emotional numbness and lostness because that's just how I felt. So it's obviously hard to give out love if you are not experiencing it. But when you start to work with your higher self and you start to crack open your heart and heal your inner child and just start to love start to love yourself, you start then to be able to gift out this love to everything and everyone. So what does that mean in real life then? So I mean, like, I started to view nature in a completely different way. And I know that sounds like, well, how's that great? But when you just start to take note of absolutely everything and anything, like one day I went for a walk and the grass was there and they all had dew on it. And I was just mesmerized by it. I was like, how beautiful does this look? But the thing is, you've got to think that every thought and every feeling that you are emitting, you're just bringing it back to you. And another one as well, this is like a real life situation. I used to be a very selfish driver, right? I would never let anyone out, yeah, because I used to think if I'm at the traffic lights now and I let you out and you go through on green and I'm on red, then I'm like, why have I let him out? Do you know what I mean? Or if I let them out and they're a dead slow driver, then I'm just like cursing myself behind the wheel. But when I started tapping into this compassion and this love and my higher self, and now I'm like, of course you can go, of course you can go. And the thing is though, it makes your day when someone lets you go. You're like, when you've been sat there for ages and someone lets you go, you kind of like elate a little bit, don't you? So it's that kind of same thing. And I know that that is the most earthly experience possible to give an example of, but I just meant that like, you just start coming from a better place in your life. You just do kind, nice things to people. And when you do kind, nice things to people, the universe starts giving you kind, nice experiences back. So, yeah, there's my very early experience. Do you have a better example, Amy, about
I
compassion and love when connecting to your higher self?
I think that's really good. So, like, connecting to the higher. So, do you have an example of connecting to the higher self?
How connecting with the compassion and love.
Yeah, I mean, I try and explain it in terms I mean, I guess again, this is like an earthly one, is like, let's talk about then, again, like probably the easiest way for me to relate it right now is like probably like, I mean, it is through my business. Okay. So for example, the more that I give, for example, doing this, right? The more that I give for free for the sake of giving, right? Because your higher self is in its most expansive state. Again, we talked about a little bit earlier. If you think about the soul, there's no contraction with it, right? So you could say then that the more that like I give doing this just for the sake of giving, the more that just naturally comes back, right? It's like the energy just comes back, and you don't know how it's going to come back, but it's going to come back in different ways. And if we tie it into like the self-love, it it comes back in like opportunities that you never could perceive, because it's all a mirror to your consciousness. And again, when we're accessing those higher states, it's going to look like on the outside you receiving money in ways that you didn't know how that has possibly happened, and like going to your bank and having more money than what you expected, and going to your person having more money than like what you expect. This literally happened to me the other day, right? It was like I was counting my money and I had some money on the side, and because I've been giving all day, I remembered counting it the other day and it wasn't as much as that. And then I looked in my purse and he had even more money than I expected. And it was like, how is this possible? I don't understand. And for like years, because money is energy and frequency, and this is like the biggest one, because if when you literally understand that it's energy, because we have got so much conditioning around two things in this human experience that people struggle with: relationships and money, romantic relationships and money, but obviously family relationships. Okay. But it's all energy. And like, how is it possible then? So I used to work as a debt collector. Okay. I was working in a debt collections environment in a call center. That was my job for a bank. And I was in debt, right? Because my consciousness matched listening to other people being in debt all day long, listening to being in a corporate environment, being talking about people talking about money, the news on the telly all day, every day in front of me, in front of my desk. Hate is a strong word, but it's true. Like I do not like the news, and it was right in front of me. So even when I looked up, there was this like negativity there. So, and I was like going through my coaching program like myself, and like learning how to be a coach and learning how to work with people. I was really working on my abundance mindset, right? And really accessing my higher self. But because I was still surrounded by that programming and it was reinforcing that, it was like I was in debt. I left that job, right, to an experience of like working in a warehouse, yeah, which was a lower paid wage. But because I could focus on my higher self in that experience, somehow, and it doesn't make sense, this is the power of energy, somehow I managed to pay off this a huge amount of debt, and we're talking about like tens of thousands of pounds. I managed to invest in myself, managed to work in coaching, and I managed to change my life, right? So it's like, how is this possible? Because it doesn't make sense on paper, but somehow it happened, because as I started to change my thoughts, as I started to align with my higher self, that debt just went away. The money situation just solved itself. So it's like, as you work with your higher self, things just show up and it all clicks into place. And yes, it is a game of faith, but your higher self knows no bounds. And when you tune into that, you are living in a state of faith. And I have never, so I left that warehouse job in 2022. I have never, ever once not being able to pay my bills, right? And I've had my business constantly. And sometimes there's been many times where I'm like, I don't understand how the numbers are making sense. I don't understand how I am supported, but I will go back and obviously look at it and do my accounts. And I'm like, how is this happening? But it's like, it just does. And I can't explain it, but your higher self wants you to do the work of your soul. So was that a good example is that resonant with
Earth
what you're
terms,
saying? Yeah,
yes.
earth terms. Yeah.
Earth terms.
Yeah.
So the next one that we're going to say, so connecting to your higher self is going to bring in your spiritual connection. So this is probably Amy's forte. So this is where you are going to be able to tune into source. And what this looks like is you start to receive downloads of information. And for me, obviously, I didn't just start getting zaps and you're like, oh my God, it was more like I'd start having thoughts in my head, but they weren't my thoughts. It was information that was being delivered to me. Um, but they were kind of quite profound. And also, as well, I was receiving guidance like, I'd just be kind of moving around my daily day, and something in my head would be like, you need to go and do this. So I'd go upstairs and go and do that, and I'd have the most profound experience ever. So once you are connected with your higher self, your connection to source, which is the universe, which is this unified field of energy that we are living within, that obviously beautifully orchestrates all our experiences. So you actually sort of, you're kind of picking up the telephone to it. It's like, hello. And, they're kind of talking back to you. And from that, you're just kind of getting little nuggets of information that are obviously going to help you on your journey. So what that looks like in an earthly kind of way is, like I say, I was just getting downloads of information that were going to help me. And things that also helped me on my healing journey. So it was like, right, go and do this now, go and do this exercise now. But what that looks like with my coaching as well is I obviously have a program written out that I take my clients through, my one-to-one program. But I'm very sort of still flexible within that program, because when I'm connecting with someone's energy, I'll get a download saying, you need to create this takeaway task, this homework for them, this person needs this. So then I'll go home, I am at home, then I'll sit there in front of my computer and I will create that homework task for them to then go and do, because that is what source is telling me that that person needs in order to develop their higher self connection. And yeah, so more recently again is I've started receiving visualizations within my coaching. So when I'm kind of describing to my clients what that kind of means, like they're having light bulb moments, because to them it's switching on a light of like, oh my God, that totally makes sense. So it's the universe is showing me information. I'm downloading this information. I'm then verbalizing this information to my client. They're then having this absolute epiphany and light bulb moment, which clicks something into place for them, which then allows them to continue on their journey. So yeah, there is an element of, spirituality in this one, but it's that's how I can explain this one in an earthly terms. So yeah, spiritual connections. Hit me, Amy.
But I feel like, yeah, it's definitely like a similar thing for me as well, where it's like I feel like what you're referring to is like the creative field that comes through your higher self. You have let's, if you want to get spiritual with it. It's like you're accessing the Akashic record, which is the infinite intelligence, the infinite possibilities of creation. So you're able to tune into that person's energy, and it's like, for me, that's what I kind of call the activation work. Is it's like, and then that person, it's like all of a sudden they'll come up. For me, it looks like that person coming up with all these mad creative ideas that they'd never even sort of considered before, because whatever it is, the energy, I'm able to express that. And all of a sudden it'll activate them, and they'll be like, oh my God, I could do this and this. I could create this course. I could create this project. I could create this. And it's beautiful. Like, that's what it gives you the ability to do, is to, you access it for yourself because you're tuning into the creative field. And anything that ever came into creation, right? So this is where, how anyone can say that none of this stuff is real is just so beyond me, because anything that is created has actually come sort of through the higher self, because we are bringing that spiritual information into the physical. That's what it means to like channel your higher self, and it gives that person access because you're raising your frequency whilst you're doing it. And on an energetic level, what I can kind of see is like all these arms like pulling this in, and it's like they are offering it to that person, which is already there, and then like they are taking that and going, oh, right? And it's like, and then it like ignites them to have the ability to access their own higher self. So yeah, that's kind of like how I perceive that. And I guess what it does as well, of course, I'm saying of course like it's obvious, but it's probably not obvious. It's like so what it looks like for me as well in the work that I do is like I feel so connected to my angels and guides through my higher self, right? And then again, it's activating a person's connection with their angels, guides, source, you know, whoever it is that you want to work with in any moment, or whoever's relevant for you to work with right now, because you know you hear the voice of your angels and guides through your higher self, because the higher self is like I see it as like the channel. It's like a pillar that's kind of like
An
it's either
espresso.
contracted or it's like open. And like when you're accessing those higher states, you are in a higher frequency, meaning that it's easier for your angels and guides to speak through you, and then for the other person to receive that information. And this is the power of like group meditation and like, you know, anything like that. You know, it like activates and align you, which is why we've called it Align and Activate, right? To this podcast, to you being able to access more information. And when you access more information, you know more. So therefore you can do more and your life changes.
Rock might walk out. So we'll just float through these ones now. So I've got as well, so connecting to your higher self. So when you are able to forge this connection with your higher self, it brings about an inner peace because you have healed your past. You are no longer triggered. And you know when you're no longer triggered because you don't get upset by it. So you're able to have these conversations, you're able to think about something from your past without getting upset and without feeling that, when you get angry or, that kind of like a kind of feeling. So this is how you know when you are healed, when you are experiencing this inner peace. So yeah, that is again connecting with your higher self on that one. Do you have anything to add on that one?
um No, I think that no, that's really good. It's definitely something that I talk about as well. It's like, when you're not triggered by it, or the emotional charge is a lot less than it was,
Mm,
then you're moving through that process. And what it means is, yeah, you are working with your higher self, in a much more expansive way, because you've got the ability, which takes time and practice, to look at things, you know, from different perspectives. Yeah, the perspective of how another person might be feeling, right? And we're not making it about us. We are seeking to understand. The higher self seeks to understand rather than be understood, right? Because when we're like, oh, he doesn't understand me, no one gets me. And it's like, your higher self, your higher self understands you. Your higher self understands other people, right? You don't need to be understood. Yeah, it's nice to have that confirmation. Everyone loves to be seen and heard and appreciated, but you don't need it. It's a very different energy to be in, and it's a very different space to live your life in. So on an earthly terms, I guess that could look like, not speaking your truth in relationships. It could look like you not putting yourself out there because you or whatever. Or again, it's all about the meanings that we give to things and the perceptions. Your higher self has a higher perspective, a higher awareness, and it doesn't need somebody to understand you, but you seek to understand others, which comes back to the compassion that you were saying about before.
mm, definitely. So getting through these now, it's just so the last one, well, the second to last one we've got here is alignment to purpose. So which we have both experienced. We were both in a corporate job, doing our do, just getting by. And yeah, when you start connecting to your higher self and the universe, your higher self is like, right, this is not what we are meant to be doing. We are meant to be doing this. And what it might start looking like at first is when you are starting doing the work, you might seek to, I'll just speak about my case. So I started, I'd done psychology. I did my psychology degree back in 2005. So my higher self always knew this is the path that we're meant to be taking. But obviously it wasn't the right time. It all happens in divine timing. And then obviously I've gone away, I've done my corporate job. And then the higher self again was like, right, we've got this itching to do something. So I started doing my coaching qualification with NLP. And it was then when the universe kind of decides and your higher self, it's like, right, this is your purpose. This is what you're meant to be doing. And like how we've said before, you'll get that inner voice, like, no, I don't want to leave my job. It's nice and comfy and I like it. But in the end, it just makes it near on impossible for you to continue in that career. And you just have to do something crazy like quit your job and set up your own company because
Yeah.
like because that is the God's honest truth. That is actually what happened because it's the calling is that much. And with my situation, like my higher self was making me ill. I would sit at my corporate computer and I would be crying and crying and crying and crying and crying all day long. Open up my coaching computer at night and I'd be happy as Larry. Like it's not for the fact that I was sat behind a computer, it was the energy of the two different computers that I was experiencing. So yeah, when your higher self wants you to be channeling something creative and something beautiful that is going to, you know, allow you to express yourself and to help other people, whether that be setting up an art gallery and doing beautiful paintings, but whether it be, doing crochet designs that are going to bring where you're channeling your creativity and bringing somebody else happiness. It's your channeling of creativity. Like that's what your soul aligned purpose will be. So yeah, it's something that brings you joy and fun. That is your soul purpose.
Yeah, the higher self will seek to be in service of not just yourself, but of others. It will always be that's how you will know it's like a soul desire, it's a higher self desire and not an ego desire, because it will be in service of the all. Whereas the lower self will just be in service of the self, right? So I went through exactly very similar to you. It's like I had a nervous breakdown where I was so ill. I remember my hands going dead at my computer, like I was having panic attack, like I couldn't even to answer the phone. I remember just freezing when I've been doing the job for like 15 years and just freezing in terror because I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it anymore, right? Because my higher self was like, you can help people change their lives, service of the all. Whereas service to myself, right, was sitting at this computer trying to be safe, right? But it wasn't safe anymore. And that's where it's like your higher self is kicking your ass because it's going, I know you're afraid, but you can help people. You really can. And you are being in service of self, and it's not going to be everyone's journey. It's just interesting that it was both of our journey. But there will be, if you are on a spiritual awakening path, right? Go back to podcast number 1 because that's where we talk about spiritual awakening. But if you are on this path and you continually growing and you're in any kind of situation that is not in alignment with your higher self, you can guarantee that something, and I'm not about, something is going to happen that will eventually move you to what you want. So the more that you work with your higher self, the more that you align to it, the more that you listen to it, the more that you let go of the lower self, the more that you start to be in service of all and be in that trusting state of faith, that's what's going to move you into a more gentler sort of transition to living a higher life, because your higher self wants the best for you, whereas your lower self wants to keep you small in service of self, right? So
I like
yeah.
how you said gentler there. I feel like what happened to me was not gentle.
No, it wasn't for me either.
She lied. It was more like a punch in the face, like, listen, this is happening. Like, come on your bike. But no, that's not to try and be scary. But yeah, it's if you're not listening to the whispers of this is what you should be doing, and you will get shouted at, and the universe will punch you in the head.
Yeah, but I just don't want people to be like, what I'm trying to get at is it, you know, the more that you listen to your higher self, the easier it's going to be. I don't want people to listen to this and think, oh my God, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. And like,
No.
no, that's not everyone's journey, which is what we talked about in the spiritual awakening one, the number 1. Yeah. But like it, if you're on this journey, you are going to be constantly realigned and moved towards like the highest version of you because your higher self will let you. Because why would you not want that?
I
Because
think
that's who you actually are.
I think what we're trying to say is we experience divine intervention in the
Mm.
case of our timelines had kind of run the course in the corporate job, and we'd both of us, I'm just going to speak because I was in my corporate job for 16 years. You've just said yours was in 15. So we were on this timeline, and our higher timeline of where we should have been doing this service work, this spiritual work that would help other people. And both of us knew where we needed to go, but we kind of weren't taking that leap of faith to go and do it. We just weren't doing it. So divine intervention sort of like was like, no, well, I'm going to make the decision for you. So yeah, it wasn't. And to be honest, it's like, life is a roller coaster. And at that moment in time, we was both going down like, and
Yeah, like that kid, that meme, the roller coaster meme where it's the kid that's like, oh.
but and your spiritual guides have got like something in store for you. But it is though, it's like, it's scary being on a roller coaster, but it's also exhilarating at the same time. So the last point is presence and mindfulness. So I think what this means is obviously being in the present moment. So before I was tapping into my higher self, I was just on autopilot all the time. And what that means is I wasn't experiencing life. I literally had it's like a kind of shroud over my head. And I just used to get up in the morning. It was like, right, get up, get out, get ready, go to work, get Harvey ready, take him to school, come home, make tea, get up, get out, get ready. And I've got my eyes shut while I'm saying it because that's how life was. I wasn't experiencing life. I wasn't doing life. I wasn't experiencing life. I was just doing life. And I wasn't doing it because I enjoyed doing it. I was just doing it because I had to do it. And then I had my kind of my spiritual awakening through COVID. And I genuinely was lay on the hammock reading Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I woke up, like I literally opened my eyes and I woke up and I looked at my son and I was like, oh my God, you're 8 years old. Like it was as if I'd been asleep for the entire time of his life. And then from that moment, then, like when I was making breakfast, I was making breakfast. I was wanted to make breakfast. I was making food. I was giving my son energy. Like everything that I was doing had a different meaning to it. Like I'm not just hoovering the house. It's like, no, I am cleaning my house to give me and my son this beautiful environment to live in. So what I'm saying is his life just didn't become this endless thing of mundane tasks. It's a case of like you start experiencing and living life in a different way and seeing, as what Amy was saying, you attach a different meaning to things. They're not tasks. They're not chores. They are things that have to be done in order for you to feel amazing, to live in your life and do what you're doing. So yeah, just not living on autopilot, just going through life in a daze, like, oh, it's like you wake up and you're like, oh my God, like this is life. I'm so connected to it. I can't wait to go and hoover the house and make packed lunches. It's like,
I really love that you brought presence into it as well, because again, this is where it comes into the different perspective, because like we can so much on this journey as well be trying to get somewhere constantly, like going up the ascension spiral or staircase or whatever you want to call it, when a lot of the time that higher perspective and working with the higher self is being here now, but being in a different state than you were before, right? It's being, but being your whole, authentic, full self, bringing all of you, bringing the full yes to every situation. And I feel like I really love what you were saying there about like, you were reading Dr. Joe Dispenza and then you woke up and your son was like 8 and you was like, what happened?
honestly, that's what happened.
I love that so much. Such a beautiful story, and I'm sure many like mothers will be able to make like probably relate to that. But now you've got that different experience with your son, that different relationship, because you're bringing your full, you know, divine self to every single thing that you do for your son as his like caretaker, as his like mother. You're being like the highest version of yourself for your son, and that is such a beautiful thing. So maybe if you're listening to this and you're like a mother and you're like, that is your purpose, you know what I mean? Because like in this society that we live in, like women, it's all about career, but there's many women that want to be a mother and bring their full selves to motherhood. So it's such a beautiful thing that you're saying there. I really do love that.
Yeah. So I feel like we have brought everything there for experiencing how to sort of what the higher self is and then what that actually does for you in life and the feelings that it evokes. So do you have anything else to add, Amy?
Um, no, but just again that it's a journey, that it's all it's just a process. It's all a process, and like the higher self always brings in compassion. It does not bring judgment. It does not judge yourself. It's about you learning to look at what the meanings are of what is happening. The more that we bring in that higher self energy, the easier your life will be. The more that you start to embody your higher self. And when I say embody, what that means is it's like you feel it, you live it,
You
you
are
are
it.
it.
You
Yeah,
emanate it. And this
yeah,
is like what we do in
yeah.
my work as well. And this is when you begin to manifest. So yeah, so as we've said in previous ones, guys, we are here for you. If there is anything you want us to speak about, please add it in the comments, and obviously we will create it as an episode. If you've got any questions or you want us to speak about anything, please let us know. And we will also put in the comments how you can how you can work with us, and also where you can find us. So yeah, this was Align and Activate. So thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.
And don't forget to like and subscribe and share
Like
it
and
with
subscribe.
anybody that you feel will benefit from it. And we love having you here. We're so grateful for you, for taking this journey with us. And we will see you next week. So
See you next week. Bye.
bye.